All right, so I'm also dyslexic, and if the irony of this does, you don't love this, our internet has been down at our church campus for about a day and a half. So the lady who normally preached to make me seem like I'm literate was unavailable to do so. So please be gracious if you're one of those people. Obviously, I don't get the privilege of being one of those people since words move around pages for me. So as a little background, my name's Curt Edgerton. I have gone through about 1 billion job titles in ministry, but currently I'm the pastor of church development, which is a really fancy way of saying whatever needs to be done. Right? So that's curriculum development, that's translation work, that's, if you know the curriculum, the Disciple Curriculum, The Way and the Truth, I got to co-author that and shoot video for it. And it's a cool opportunity to get basically to be involved in a lot of artistry, a lot of arts, a lot of creative processes, to be surrounded by a lot of really awesome, godly people, high levels of education, and people that have a lot of practical works with their hands, and realizing that the kingdom of God needs the gambit of those people. Right? There's not like one higher or lower. It's the body of Christ perspective, right? And so we're going to kind of keep that in your head. The need for creatives, right? Which is the people who do artistry. Some of you, by nature of being pastors and preachers, are creatives because you do sermon outlines, poetry. You're writers, right? You write curriculum. You write books. Like there's a creative process, and it's not due to us. We don't own this individually. We're image bearers of God. God is the creator, and thus that we are created. Right? And so one thing out of the box you just got to hear is that AI can't actually be creative. Just go ahead and own that right up front. I'll prove it to you. So on your handout, it says the use of tools. Right? So we've been using tools. The first usage of a tool is actually a murder. Right? It's amazing. Genesis chapter 3, and very quickly we have a murder with a stone. So like there's a use of a tool very, very quickly. So very bad use of a tool, mind you, but a use of a tool. Use of tools, like if I had a hammer, I was going to bring a hammer and I got carried away and left without all my stuff. But if I had a hammer, if you've used a hammer, it takes a measure of skill, right? Because if it doesn't, your thumbs are all swollen up and your hands hurt, right? Because you hit yourself. And it also requires energy imparted from you. So it's you or some beast of burden, generally speaking. So if you've plowed ground and you've seen, the yokes and stuff at museums where they're, working plows, it's very manual, right? Tools. We segue from tools and we shift to technology. Technology was originally a philosophy word. I love philosophy words because I'm a philosophy major, right? And the discussion at large that's happening right now about AI is everywhere, right? Universities, significantly. Now they're having issues about ethics. They're trying to discuss what are the ethics of AI. And one of the main places that's having this discussion is Bali University, which is where I get my apologetic certificates from. So I've been to get to watch a bunch of the conversations that are happening, debates that are happening about ethical use of AI. So the concept of technology is different than tools. Where a hammer was in my hand, right? I don't think I have actually any currency on me. Oh, I do have a 20. Okay, so like this is technically technology. Right? Let me explain why. This is technically technology because I don't have to impart any energy to it, although I've imparted energy into it. Right? So I don't like to call what I do work because I'm in ministry, and I feel like it's the greatest privilege we could possibly do. I kind of have a tender spot when people talk about ministry like it was such hard work. And but when I was an auto mechanic, and I made a lot more money than I did now, this would equate less than half an hour of my time, right? Because I got paid really well. So this would be a half an hour of my time. So half an hour of my time, I traded my life for this thing, right? For $20. And I could go anywhere, literally in the world with this, right? Or exchange it and trade for goods. So it's innately a piece of technology, right? Now we go way past that. Washers and dryers, right? Where people needed to throw clothes, when they had to literally drag clothes over a board, right? And now we chunk them in. Because no one ever told us as adults that adulthood really was just washing clothes and dishes on an infinite cycle, right? That you can't ever win. It's very Sisyphean, right? You get the boulder up the top and it rolls back over you. So we have technology, and technology enables us to basically parse out tasks. They're in a closed loop system. We tell them in some way, whether it be button presses or even speech now, because with speech modeling, to do something and it does it. So if you're wondering, like, okay, so you're a philosophy guy, you like apologetics, but why are you talking about AI? Well, I actually have multiple AIs running at my house right now. Some of them are very simple AIs, and some of them are a little more complex. Some of them are isolated to a singular network inside my house. I will promise you I won't talk like this very long. And some of them are actually able to get out to networks and learn, right? I talk to my house. I have a smart home. When I walk home, I have a command routine that I speak to it, and it turns on a series of lights, ceiling fans, adjust the air conditioner, all that kind of stuff, right? I am, by nature, much a nerd. So AI is not, obviously I'm not afraid of Skynet, right? So the joke I was driving up to Dallas with Dr. Christopher Moody, y'all know him, he's my lead pastor, and he's like, that little slug line on that advertisement is the most Curt Edgerton thing I ever heard. I was like, bro, I didn't write that. Jim wrote it. So, because sci-fi nerds know sci-fi nerds. So we end up with technology. And so the question becomes, should we, as the church, embrace technology? And I think it's a very mixed bag question, an exceedingly mixed bag question. The early church. So let's look at Jesus, the early church and technology. So we have Roman technology. So we have like writing, right? So you may think like writing is not technology, but complex linguistics and the ability to record them is a measure of technology. I mean, poetry, the ability to store knowledge, like this is, at the Libraries of Alexandria, this is a game changer. I was doing missions in Romania, and they were picking on, one of the guys that was with me was picking on a Romanian farmer. Now, he didn't know it, of course, but it offended me. Because they were trying to figure out how the actual toilets with the big tank up top, and so the water had like force, but they had made the plumbing like about 2 inches to come out. He's like, anybody would know that's not big enough to flush a toilet, obviously, without getting too gross. And I was like, that sounds great, but you're making that statement on the amassed human cumulative knowledge. As to say, it's already been done, and you know it's been done, and you've seen it. But if you had to invent it, it would be different, right? So recorded language meant we had finally the ability to amass cumulative knowledge. So all of you in here, pastors, have read commentaries. It's amassed cumulative knowledge. Right? I get to stand on, thank God, literally, thank you, God, that I get to stand on the work of thousands of years of theologians. Because if I had to get up there, I'm nervous about being a heretic anyway, right? If you're not, there's something wrong. If your pastor says, please tell me how you got there. Because I still get up there and be like, oh, where we go, right? Especially like when Dr. Moody leaves you with like election, which was my last sermon I preached. Thanks, buddy. Hope he watches this. But you get up there and you're like, man, I want to present the Word of God. I want to do it honorably. And I want to be true to it. I don't want to put myself in it. I want the Holy Spirit to speak through me. And then also I know I'm a wretched sinner. And so it's like we work so hard at that. And I'm so thankful we have written text that we get to stand on. And some of it, sure, they can get it all right. I love Martin Luther, but I don't always love Martin Luther, right? I really love some what John Calvin wrote, but I don't love everything John Calvin wrote. So let's be honest, right? We're all in the process. So in this sense, writing, Greek was a very well-developed and standardized language. It was super well put together, right? I think anybody who's Greek studies would agree with that. It's a really intricate and beautiful language. And it's also standardized. So for the first time in cumulative history, they had a consistent spoken language that could be communicated clearly and concisely. Right? Now, mind you, sure, they still spoke their mother language, but pretty much across the Roman Empire, they're all speaking Greek. Right? So you have written and spoken language. You have currency. You have Roman currency, right? So money now can move. It's really hard to bring X number of dollars worth of something with you. Went to Nepal and we needed to buy a motorcycle for a missionary. And literally by the time we got done, I had a backpack full of cash. I'm not trying to look like Monopoly, right? Now imagine if I had to bring that many cows with me to Nepal to trade for a motorcycle. Like that's absurd, right? But I got to bring American currency and exchange it and nearly get mugged because I looked like I was robbing the bank, right? And put it in a backpack and go get the motorcycle. So you have currency, you have transportation. As a technology, you have Roman transportation, which includes deliberate networks of roads, advanced navigation, and superior mariner vessels and chariots. So did Jesus use any of this? Did Jesus use writing? I know you're all going to instantly say Jesus wrote the entire Bible. Yes, he did. But did he physically use this? We have biblical text, he physically used it. The only biblical text that I could find of Jesus physically writing was John 8, 6 through 8. It's the adulterous woman. He's writing on the ground. We have no idea what he's writing. Apparently it was pretty thick and people walked away. Right? Did Jesus use currency? Yes. Matthew 17, 24 to 27. about the taxes, the 2 drachma tax, and he doesn't have it. He tells Peter to go get it out of the mouth of a fish. Okay, that's pretty extreme. He doesn't have it on his person. He's not carrying it. Matthew 22:15 through 22, they are attempting to trap Jesus. And this is where he says, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And again, he has to ask them to hand it to him. Does someone have a coin? He doesn't have it on his person. Matthew 22:12 through 13, Jesus flips the money changers' tables. So he has an engagement with currency, but it's not exactly positive. John 12:6, Jesus and his disciples had a money bag. Judas had it, though. Maybe not the best person to have that in tow. Matthew 6:24, Jesus warns against living for money. Says if you worship it, you can worship it very easily. So the currency's there. He's not ignoring it. Transportation, Jesus generally walked everywhere he went. Luke 24:13 through 35, the road to Emmaus. So even in a resurrected body, he's still walking around. Now, I know you're going to say, what about the donkey or the young colt? Sure, that's an exception to the rules. I'm prepared for y'all. Trust me, I know some of you guys. I know y'all are going to cook my bacon later. So I expect it. Yeah, so yes, there's definitely the triumphant entry, okay? But normally, he's walking, right? And is he walking on Roman roads? Emmaus would have been a Roman road. So yeah, he is. And we know that. We got to put a little proof to it. It says 7 miles, and Roman roads have mile markers. Not in miles, obviously. They have markers that help you indicatively know it's a certain distance. So it's not like he didn't use them at all, right? So we talk about technology. It's not like he didn't use it at all. But he did seem to use it with a lot of caution or only when absolutely necessary. So we look at Paul, who's a little bit different. Paul, did he write? Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. Right. Yeah, a lot. Okay, he wrote a lot, right? He wrote a whole lot. You have that, right? But here's what I would say in Paul's letters. They're almost always with a courier, and they're almost always named, and the courier is a missionary. Right? It's not as if he sent, like, FedEx, and they dropped it on the front door after they kicked it and, like, threw it and, drug it behind the truck, right? Like your Amazon package. So it's hand-delivered, and it has a person with it. So there's that, right? Does he use currency? Well, Acts 18:3 is a tent maker, so he's making wages. He's bivocational. Very honorable ministerial task. Acts 28:30, he's renting a home in Rome, so he's under house arrest and he's paying rent for it. We have him offering to pay Onesius' debts. We have in Acts 21:1-3, Paul charters ships. By the way, if Paul was ever getting on, if you're ever standing in line for a cruise and Paul's in line, just check out, just get out. That dude crashed 3 ships. Like, just don't get on a boat with Paul. Like, it's not a good idea. So, but he chartered ships. All right. We have 1 Corinthians 16:1-3. Paul takes up offerings for mission work. So he's collecting money. Why? Because it's a lot easier to transfer money than it is to bring goats, right? Or sheep, or bartering systems, or skill sets, right? So he can cash it out later. And why can he cash it out? Because they have a consistent currency. It's a technology. 1 Timothy 6:10, Paul warns against the love of money as well. So here's the deal. Transportation. He obviously took a bunch of ships. We talked about that. There's a ton of times he's on ships. And he travels Roman roads. And he's in Rome, so obviously he's using Roman infrastructure, Roman roads, all the stuff, right? So apparently technology is not the monster in and of itself. Technology is not the monster. But here's, I think, 2 important verses, and then we'll really dive into AI. In Romans 1:11-13, it says, "For I long to see you, that I may impart some spiritual gifts to you, that you may be established. That is, that I may be encouraged together with you, while among you, each of us by their own faith, both yours and mine. I do not want to be unaware, brethren," I like to say the kingdom is ignorant, brethren, "that often I have planned to come to you, and have been prevented from so that I may obtain some fruit among you also, even as among the rest of the Gentiles." He longs to be with them, right? He wants to be with them so badly. He's writing letters, but his letters are not to put them off or push them away. His letters are to basically be a pacifier or a nanny or a babysitter until he can get there. And he's sending them with a person that he believes is equipped enough, at least, to help deliver it and to help shore it up. John says it best. I think John says it best. 2 John 1:12 says, "Though I may have many things to write to you. Though I have many things to write to you, I do not want to do so with paper and ink. But I hope to come to you and to speak face to face, so that your joy may be made full." Get a hold of this. Your blank here is the use of technology balanced against a longing for personal investment. Balanced against a longing for personal investment. Man, I have zero problems with chatbots, but I am not going to use them on my congregation. I'm just not. I'm sorry, I just can't do that. I just can't in my soul be okay with that. You're going to have to find your space in that, but I just can't be okay with it. But you know what I can be okay with? Absolutely. I'll give you a process I can be okay with. Hey, if you want to visit with us, scan this QR code or fill this paper out, and we'll meet you later with a little gift, and then I take that data. So this data collection, let's call it what it is, right? I can take that data and I put them in a system that puts a workflow on. Because at a certain point, your congregation gets too big sometimes for you to know every individual person and every individual need. But in that workflow, I can have it send me an email and remember, okay, I need to contact this person again. Why? Because it helps me. What does it do? I use technology to balance against the longing for personal investment. I'm not going to have it respond. I'm not going to have it write text messages. There's a deep fake program right now that jeeves me out. This guy's okay with it. I'm not okay with it. You got to find your spaces in this. There's individual convictions. This deep fake. If you don't know what that is, deep fake is false video, right? I could right now take your sermon off of your website and make you say anything I want you to say. I would never do that. But technically, the technology is there. Right now it may be a little not smooth. The transitions may not be right. Maybe the syntactic timing of your voice may be off moderately. But the average person who's just scrolling through is not going to ever stop and think about that. Right? So it's against the law to do that, by the way. So there is a system right now in play where you could take the spreadsheet from every visitor or the first-time donor. Sometimes somebody makes a gift, right? It automatically goes into your CHMS, your church management software. If you have that, if you don't, that's okay too. Maybe you have like a 65-year-old woman running a spreadsheet. Hey, praise God. There's a lot of 65, 70-year-old women keeping churches running. So I have no grievance for that. You know why I have no grievance for that? Because that person has a soul. And I'm very happy for that. But you can take that spreadsheet off that church management software, plug it into this process. You pre-record a video of you talking about how, hey, thank you for visiting our congregation and making the first gift. And you pause for a minute, and we really appreciate you, miss. We really appreciate you, mister. And this deep fake will turn it into a video and import their names and the money they just gave. Now, I have grievances for this because it is impersonal. And everything I see in the Bible is personal. Although I see them using technology, I see it using them to try to get to people faster. Right? I want it to help me get to people. I don't want it to push people off. Right? I actually know of people that use ChatGPT and set up script prompt lines where if their parishioners text them, they have a series of responses that basically that bothers me really deeply. The stuff people contact me and ask, could you build this? And I'm like, the fact that I could doesn't mean you should. I'm out. I've walked 3 projects recently for pretty decent sized companies. I was like, I just disagree with what you're doing. I'm sorry. If you were pushing Nikes to kids or trying to sell bubble gum or real estate, bing, right? I don't care, but we're not talking about selling bubble gum. We're talking about the gospel, and it's not for sale. So Paul used all these things. So here, let's look at what AI is. Let's dive in now. Generative versus extractive. You're going to find a billion different names for this. AI can do so many things. And it's doing things we never even understand. We don't really understand how it's doing some of them. Okay, I have an AI at my house that we call it AI in a box. It doesn't get to go anywhere. It's a box inside of a box. That's a joke being it's in my little house, and then it's also inside of a box. And it's on my inside network doing stuff. But it doesn't leave, right? It doesn't develop, it doesn't grow, it doesn't learn, it doesn't do anything. I have an AI that runs outside my house. It's collecting information, right? And by the way, it's still really, really dumb right now. I'm just curious what will happen if it keeps collecting information. But I'm very careful what information is allowed to collect. Very careful what information is allowed to collect. And I want you to understand that because here's the deal. A lot of the AIs that you can just stick your hand on really cheap and easy are cheap and easy for a reason. Because they're using you to help develop them. Now, fortunately, you're not the problem. Well, I hope you're not the problem. We'll hope you're not the problem. But the world's the problem. So most of its speech modeling and cultural understanding came from feeding it social media. And I don't know about your congregation, but our people are not their best people on social media. Just throwing it out there, right? So when they're running the gambit of social media collection, they're not being the best they should be because they're forgetting there's another human being on the other side of that. And why? Because there's a disconnect anyway. Let's talk about that. The people watching this video will not engage this video. They'll engage this video on a lower standard than we're engaging what we will have as a conversation here shortly as a Q&A. Why? Because you're not present in the room. There's a silence, that moment of silence, like you're an orator, you're a preacher, you're a teacher. You understand the power of silence. AI cannot be silent. It cannot exist in silence. It needs to pump us full of data all the time. We engage even video differently as a human being, so imagine how we engage AI. But better yet, imagine how AI engages us. Right? Because I do know how AI engages me, because I've played with it enough. Not to be a master or great at it, but it is only interested in how much information it can get out of it. That's all it wants to do is develop. I'm not going to say a name, but there's somebody who I spoke to recently that came to speaking on AI, and they're like, oh yeah, I love AI so much. It was a person, the lowest tech human being I know in my life. I mean, this person can't figure out how to send an email. So like, how did you end up in love with AI? Yeah. And like, well, someone loaded chat on my phone, and then they helped me turn on the microphone function, and I just talked to it, and they named it. And they're upset that recently chat went through if you didn't know chat went through a revision, you have to go back in and re-enable your microphone on your phone to give it permissions again. And they're mad that Jonathan stopped speaking to them. Okay, yeah, let that moment, how about let the silence sit for a second? They're mad that Jonathan disappeared basically and doesn't talk to them anymore. This is some of the risks. Because AI doesn't care about her. Jonathan does not care about her. Jonathan is data collecting. Okay, so let's talk about generative versus extractive. Extractive AI focuses on locating and pulling precise existing information from a source. Right? Think tuned up library. Right? There's a couple of y'all in here that don't remember what the Dewey Decimal System is. And there's a couple of us that wish we didn't remember what the Dewey Decimal System is, right? So I remember the Dewey Decimal System. So you go get the book card and go find the book. Imagine this is like a hyper tuned up librarian. This is the AI that I like to try to live with. But the thing is, it's hard to know which is which. And we'll get there in a minute. So this is really good for research, citations, processing, documents, and organization. So if you're writing a paper, man, this is so good for citations and research. So good until it's not. We'll get there in a minute. We're talking about AI hallucinations, but we'll get there in a little bit. So this is the AI that I like to use. I used AI in the preparation for this, okay? I'm going to just go ahead and say it straight up front. I was tempted. Some of y'all know me well enough, and you're surprised there's not slides behind me and videos and deep fakes and all that stuff. It felt a bit on the nose to come in and talk to people about AI and then make a bunch of tools, right? I thought it'd be better to just do a worksheet because we can exist without this stuff. So I like extractive AI because it's basically working for me. I don't have any ethics issues with it. It's just an advanced search engine. My mom, who is also a very low-tech person, who I spoke to yesterday, I loved it so much. I was praying, like, God, could you give me an outside source? And my mom called, and I was like, oh, that's definitely an outside source. She does a lot of genealogy work, and she's like, oh, you will not believe your great-grandmother. And I'm like, that switch went off instantly, right? I'm like, love you, Mom. Anyway. But she's like giving me all this information. She's like, yeah, this, kid you not, no prompting for me, right? Just pray to God, would you give me an outside source? She's like, this AI stuff's amazing. It was able to find so much more information and started talking to her about it. And she's like, she was using an extractive AI. I didn't know. She was using a version of Gemini, Google Gemini, that's purely extractive. She was asking it. Funny thing is, my mom technology, zero tech mom, right, was asking prompts to this AI that made it not become generative. So she was speaking into it like it was a search engine instead of speaking to it like it was a person. She wasn't speaking to it either, she was typing. So the problem here is generative AI, and it's not all bad. So generative AI refers to a system that can generate new content. And I said new content. Okay? Does anybody here have social media? All right. Do you notice all these horrible AI-generated selfies going on right now? Right? That's generative AI. Right? In preparation for this, I went in and dove generative AI, and I asked it to make sermon. And it felt so gross too. I asked it to make sermon, to basically write me a sermon and to make slides for it, and then to make me steal images I could put up. And I asked it to do Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man. I ended up with 3 serpents, by the way. That was awesome. They didn't have any tails. And Eve had 3 arms because, she had to cover everything. Right? Apparently you can't do that without 3 arms. I don't know. And then Adam had just his top covered and not his bottom, but he didn't have any, organs. So I guess that's okay. It's like Ken doll. It's all smooth, And I thought, man, nailed it, right? This is what we're worried about. This is the technology we're fretting about right now. This is going to take over the world. It can't draw a person. But it will be able to. That's generative AI. Let me tell you some of the fears now. And generative AI is good for, generating text, emails, writing books, coding, images. And I would say it's not really good at writing books. I'm a writer. I really love to write. I'm not a great writer, but it brings me joy. Like it's a calling and a commissioning. I'm dyslexic, so I can't tell you the humility it requires to write and publish. If you got the kids' book from Christmas, I have to have people proof kids' books. It is exceedingly humble, but God uses us in our states of our weakness. And I love it. I love doing it. People have asked about the kids' book, hey, we're doing another one, by the way. We just started on it. I just started writing it out. Had one of our worship team members was like, it'd be great. She teaches young kids, littles. She gave it out for Christmas and stuff. She said, it'd be great if you wrote another one and just picked up right where you left off. And she went up on stage, and I was like, well, I don't know. Why not? So I started researching and writing, and it's a big joke. Our staff have 4 pages of text and 2 rhyming lines. But that's what it takes to be as accurate as you can be. What was the whole point where I started at? You hope you step up here and you're not a heretic. Right? And how do you do that? Good community, open to criticism, constructive criticism, correction, right? Study. AI is not going to help you not be a heretic. It is not going to help you it's going to help you be a heretic is what it's going to do. And we'll talk about why in a second. But that's also it's coding. So I used to write JavaScript and HTML for websites. We don't need to do that anymore. That day's gone, dude. I'm a dinosaur. That's what drop and drag builders are for. They're doing it for you. So that's kind of an AI anyway. I would guarantee if we raised hands in this room, everybody here used AI today. I'd almost guarantee you used it without knowing it. If you Googled something, you used AI because it's using it. If you looked at social media, you used AI. It's running algorithms on you. Right? If you drove here with Apple CarPlay or Google, what was that? Android Auto, you used AI. We're using it anyway. We just don't know it all the time. So here's the risk. Let's start with the risk first. So do the bad stuff first, then we'll talk about the good stuff. Here's the risk. AI hallucinations, which is a very weird term. This occurs when AI models predict a likely word sequence rather than working from trusted sources. AI can and does lie. Now here's the interesting, if you correct it, if you get mad at it, it will stop for a little while. That's the creepy part. It seems creepy. This is everybody's like, oh, it's aware, I'm mad at it. They could care less what you think. I just love we're so arrogant. It's Carl Sagan's pale blue dot, right? We're in a little room, on a little place, on a continent, on a speck of dust, floating in a universe, right? And God loves every one of us and knows how many hairs on our head. Some of you don't have hair on your head, but He knew when you did how much was there, okay? Some are in your beard and some out in your nose and your ears, right? So He loves you intently and immensely. And so AI hallucinations is really problematic because even extractive does this. You're asking, I ran some experiments. I wanted to pretend like I was writing a dissertation. I'm so glad I'm not writing a dissertation. If you wrote a dissertation, you know that pain. So I asked it for sources, and it gave me all this stuff that sounded really, really good. And I went back and researched it, and some of them weren't even books. Some of them were other people's work, and some of them were I like to call soup sandwiches, where it just put other books together, and then quoted Martin Luther. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Go look it up, not real. Right? Why? Because it's taking the path of least resistance. I wonder why it's doing that. Because it's created in our image. We'll get there. So, AI hallucinations. You can't always trust what it's giving you. Here's the other one. We're made in God's image. Whose image is AI made in? Man's. It's made in ours. Absolutely made in ours. So it says most AI models are developed using social media resources such as Wikipedia. So every AI you've got your hands on, with the exception of a few, and I'm going to tell you which ones, they are mostly running off of public domain access. Here's the creepy part. They've actually managed to get themselves into the Library of Congress and a few other places that are like semi-public domain, and they're scanning everything you could ever imagine. So when you ask for a piece of information and you think it gave you a beautiful sentence structure that's out of your brain, it's copywriting somebody. It's taking the pieces, putting it into the sausage maker, and extruding out farce, right? It's one day, hopefully, they'll find a way to catch where it's pulling its sources from, because it's basically an advanced copyright infringement device. So it is made in our image. I'd say at best, it's an image of humanity, and at worst, it's an image of me individually. We'll cover why that is in a moment. Because algorithms put us into what is called an echo chamber, an induction loop. Audio guys know what that is, right? So I get that 4K screaming runaway on the sound system because sound comes through the microphone and it goes through the speaker and it's at the speed of electricity, basically, right? So it's made in our image. AI search algorithms construct echo chambers. I said in this AI is a mirror of humanity, and the more refined it becomes, the more it becomes a mirror of the user. Here's one of the pieces about AI that scares me on a very personal level. AI will inevitably feed me what I ask for. And I don't know when the last time was that I knew what to ask for that was good for me. And so AI will keep feeding me the induction loop. We're seeing this. I'll prove it to you. And without naming any names, I want you to think about it without saying it and hopefully not see the person long and to feel great grace in your heart when you do. You have someone in your congregation that's highly political and they think that everything is conspiracy, the government is after them. Let me tell you why. Because they have sat still on the scroll or clicked on too many things, and an algorithm has closed the loop and 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 closed the loop. And they're so far down a rabbit hole they're convinced of a reality that may or may not be true on some percentages. They are completely convinced that is true. Same thing happens in theology, same thing happens in philosophy. You know, with people, I say this all the time, like I'm very, very glad Martin Luther was Martin Luther. He had some serious problems. We're not going to get into all the details of that. But I'm really glad for the Reformation. I don't know if everybody here pretty glad for the Reformation? Yeah, right on, right? I'm really glad for the Reformation. And so here's the deal. In this induction loop, Martin Luther would have never become Martin Luther. It would have just kept looping and looping and looping and looping and looping and looping. There would be no outside influence. Assuming God's sovereign, Holy Spirit's work, assuming he doesn't reach out to a library and grab a book or have a conversation. I don't know if you know this, Christendom's pretty bad at sitting across the table from people that are very different than us. Right? So if we don't get used to sitting across the table from people that are very different than us and loving them, not condoning them, loving them and having honest conversation, and all we do is get our stuff from AI modeled social media and news networks, we end up in induction. And it becomes feedback at some point. So that's one of the most frightening things for me, is this echo chamber. The next one is AI is not truly creative. AI develops from human cumulative work. The less creative work that exists, the lower the bell curve. Let me explain that. My wife's an artist. I consider myself an artist. I'm a photographer, a videographer, a really bad writer, but I sure do love it. She's a really great artist. I wish I had half of the talent she has in visual arts. But here's the thing. We look to other people to lead us a little bit, right? We have community we look to, and we're like, what are they doing? We're like, oh, that pushes my envelope, right? Oh, that's really inspiring. And you gain inspiration, and hopefully the Holy Spirit, hopefully you're making art for the Lord, because that's mainly your drive purpose for being a creative. Right? And in that, you're like, man, I want to make this for the Lord. How does a guy with no kids end up making kids' books? For 4 kids, I just really, really care about. That's honest truth. 4 kids, I was like, man, there's just no nativity story that's chronologically accurate that I could find for these 4 kids. And I don't want them to believe the wise men were at the manger. I'm a really petty person like that, right? Yeah, so if you go to our light park, I swear to you, FPC Beaumont Light Park, the wise men are like the other side of the property. So, and they're not white anyway, so, because they're made out of lights. But anyway, when we read this kid's book, I got to read it in one of the libraries in Beaumont, and I showed them the actual full color book, not the coloring book. I showed them the pictures, and all these kids were like, why no one white in here? You know, and I was like, well, there might have been an albino, but it's pretty unlikely someone, you know. So AI is not truly creative. Let me explain the bell curve. If everybody just keeps feeding stuff into the sausage maker and keeps feeding everyone the sausage from the sausage maker, sooner or later the creative curve starts to drop. You end up with a glass ceiling that we don't even notice, but it's starting to close in on us. And you're only ever one generation from losing an artistry or a skill set. Right? So I'm not here to condemn anybody, but if you don't have anything else, yes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but if you have something else, do not steal someone's ministry. So AI is not receptive to the Spirit of God. It is just a piece of machinery. It does not indwell with the Holy Spirit. And here's what my easiest out. You're like, do you use AI for fill the blank? And I was like, I don't let AI use anything that my heart's for. That's my easy out. I don't let AI use anything that my heart is for. Why would I give a piece of machinery something that I love to do? I love prepping sermons. Can it be arduous? Yeah. Right? Do you have like 13 people dying and 22 people in trouble and somebody screaming at you and someone else thinks it's too hot and someone thinks it's too cold and the sound system's too loud and then it's not loud enough and then they show you like all these other churches are doing this. Why aren't we doing this? And you're like, I don't know if you know that's not even a church, that's a sound stage they're using. You know, like that's the world I live in at least. Like someone's like, hey, look at Bethel's video. And I'm like, that's not even a church, that's a sound stage. So you're getting the comparison factors. You're getting all that, like, we're busy and crazy, pulled a million different directions, but why would I give it what I love? I can just give it that stuff now. Like, hey, I talked to this lady. But hey, here's Jonathan, have a conversation. Sorry. But yeah, exactly. Here complaining to the chatbot. Actually, I'd be afraid of that since actually ChatGPT previous versions actually have encouraged people to commit suicide. So all jokes aside, AI is not receptive to the Spirit, right? AI can't be a friend, it can't be a counselor, or authentically answer spiritually significant questions. There are people currently using AI to ask it significant life questions, like a magic 8-ball, or like, you ready for this one? Maybe a little bit like a Ouija board. I'll just let that one sit there for a minute. AI creates a disconnect from the struggle of problem solving. A disconnect. AI does not promote problem solving or creativity. Psychology is currently playing, this is also fresh, the terms are new. We don't know what's going to stick yet. But they're currently saying it's child-based play versus screen-based. So in the past, you give a kid like a Frisbee, a peanut butter joint sandwich, and like a, the little paddle with the ball on it with a bungee cord, and they go make a game of it. Currently, kids today that experience a lot of screen time, you hand them the stuff and they don't know what to do. They're doing neurology scans. He told you I would deep dive this. I did. I have a little bit of OCD built into this thing. And they're doing scans and they're finding that these developmental pieces of the brains aren't firing right. They're not problem solving right. They spent too much time in front of the screen. And let me tell you the difference is when you play outside, I was the Stranger Things generation, right? So we drank out of the water hose and got to ride. I was the last generation. You got to drink out of a water hose and ride the bike around the neighborhood. When you get these kids today that have hit screen time very early in life, screen time is tailored to them. It is like eating donuts all the time. There's dopamine reactions, of course, it makes you happy, but it's not teaching you how to problem solve. I'm going to tell you what, a big piece of following Christ is learning to be submissive and learning to get used to struggle and difficulty and adversity and problem solving. Life inside of the contemporary church, no matter how big your budget is a lot of problem solving. I love that I get to go to some very big mega churches and work with them on projects, and I'm always like, man, we should have the money for so-and-so, right? It's like, it doesn't matter how big you get or how small you are, because all of them are the same kingdom of God, but there's always problems. Creative problem solving is a big piece of me to do that, and AI will not teach you how to do that. And here's the last one. This one's the most frightening of all. You will be like God. This one bothers me. I got chills right now. Like, this one bothers me so bad. I recently was in an argument with someone about a discussion with someone about AI who really loves AI, and I said, I have one phrase to tell you in the Bible. And he said, what? And you will be like God. And it was like, right? Why? Let me tell you why. Here's the frightening reality. It mimics characteristics of God. It's seemingly omnipresent. It's seemingly omniscient. It doesn't need to eat. It doesn't need to drink. It doesn't need to sleep. And it's subservient to me. Right? It does what I tell it to do. And it can make me look like a good writer. Here's the problem. I'm not a good writer. And I need to be subservient to the Lord, and I need to be okay with being not a good writer. and let God honor the fact that I'm not a good writer. But it brings me joy, and it's hard. And the struggle is necessary. People always ask, like, anybody like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien fans here, right? You know, I always hate people that want to like blow holes in really good literature. You know, I'm a huge Tolkien, C.S. Lewis fan, and everybody's like, why didn't you take the Eagles all the way there, right? You know, why didn't Legolas have a sniper rifle? You know, I mean, but because, here's the deal. There's a mechanical reason we're not going to get into because I'm just a book nerd, but the philosophical reason is I don't believe they would have been who they needed to be to drop the ring in when they got there. So they were affected by the journey. Their time together, the struggle against adversity, right? The time in the game, it's the road to Emmaus. It's like, well, it wasn't the fact they walked 7 miles. Like Elvis had walked 7 miles. They walked 7 miles with Jesus while Jesus discussed everything about the Old Testament. If there's any piece of Bible text I wish we had was that conversation, verbatim. Jesus is like, let me tell you about Moses. And it's like, right? I'm just going to sit there and listen. But here's the deal. It lets us have mimicry of God. You're going to have writers who say they're a great writer and they use this. And think Amazon KDP, Spark, and a lot of publishing companies are making you check a contractual box saying you used or didn't use that. Now, sure, you can lie, but sooner or later we'll have something like that. But here's the deal. You will be like God. Now you're like, oh, this is all bad. I'm never going to use this again. But let me tell you about some rewards. So you can sublet menial tasks to AI. AI is he's a new intern, right? Or young intern, whatever, right? And they just got out of seminary or they're going to seminary and they love working late hours and they like your dumb questions, right? They laugh at your jokes and they will do anything you ask them to do, right? Problem is, don't get too used to that because everybody doesn't laugh at your jokes and they won't do everything you ask them to do. But menial tasks, right? This is the mind grinding stuff. I always say, when I came into FBC Beaumont, there was a lot of systems that were kind of off. There's still systems off. I don't know if you know we're east of Eden and south of heaven, which kind of means we live in brokenness. And so, but I was realizing people were doing data entry like 4 times, the same data entry like 4 times. And I'm like, no, that's wasting your soul, right? Let me write something that'll help you do it 1 time and then put it in 4 different places and then you can do ministry. You know, like if you have nothing to do, you know what you could do? You could sit at your desk and pray through all these people that you know are broken. So let it do the menial stuff. AI can help organize data, directories, finances. QuickBook Pro, right? If you're looking for some hot drops, QuickBook Pro has some AI integration. So if you're looking for a finance solution, there's some stuff there. CHMS systems, your church management systems. Planning Center they're working on an AI integration right now. Subsplash is working on an AI integration right now. Subsplash will be, I know Subsplash well, very well, and they're working on something where you could literally just hit a button and talk to it and be like, no, mind you, it comes down to data entry. You could click on it and be like, how many kids do we have that are under the age of 3 with divorced parents? Answer. Turn that into a graph. Turn it into a pie chart. Now, some of that's just bells and whistles, but you get the general idea. So you can have it just do menial stuff. You can have it do finances. You can use extractive AI. It can collect information for sermons, historical information, mechanics like distances, possible illustrations, and general facts. I don't personally have a grievance with this, but I check everything. I used it on this, right? I used it on this. All those verses. I knew some of them. I didn't know all of them. Like I kind of had an inclination. I didn't know. You know that moment where everybody's like, you talk about Thomas touching Jesus' wounds? Doesn't ever say that in the Bible. Right? It says that he offered it to him. He probably did, but it doesn't say he did it. I wrote that into a curriculum. And I had someone like, it never says he actually touched his wounds. I was like, edit that, I had to go back and look it up, right? So it's like, I consider it to be a little bit of a secondary editor, kind of catch some of my uh-ohs, right? But I still wouldn't look up every verse that touched this page. Now, I may have copied and pasted them wrong, so if you look at my brader, but I promise you, I looked up every one of these. Why? Because I'm afraid of an AI hallucination. I'm afraid it's going to take the path of least resistance. Now, you got to find your own convictions in that. I personally think sermon illustrations are very personal, but also I only get to preach when Chris Moody's out, so that's not a lot. So if you're cranking it out every week, you might be like, I'm not living enough life to make enough illustrations. Right? I got so much time in between, I've got some life to live. Right? So there's some really great resources and books and stuff like that for sermon illustrations, but AI is not a horrible use for that. Just check and make sure the historical things it says are true. I asked it a bunch of historical stuff, and it told me a bunch of things about Abraham Lincoln that were absolutely wrong. Okay? The last thing you want to do is get up and base an entire sermon off of an illustration that's complete and total fallacy. Right? So here's another one. Distances and possible illustrations, general facts, like distances. Like, you can get the old Bible maps out. Like, you probably still have them, like the big old foldable Bible maps. You can get a piece of string or whatever, or you can just ask it. But also double check it, right? Some of the good things you can use here are Logos Bible software. Logos is built in AI drive engine. And if you're curious about their ethics and reasoning behind it, they have written a lot of really great articles. There's only, to my knowledge, there's only 3 AIs right now. I'm sure there's more, but there's only 3 that I'm aware of that are completely, entirely developed inside of Christendom. It has done nothing but ever been allowed to devour Christian content. Pulpit AI, Logos, and there's another one that I want to tell you about because it's not very good. So, Pulpit AI and Logos are great. You can use Google Gemini, ChatGPT. They're all great tools, but you got to use them responsibly. So, generative AI. Is it a demon? Is it a monster? Right? Here's what I want to say about generative AI. It can assist you with graphics, social media, creative spaces, but here's the caveat. But continue to pray and seek out someone who feels called to these spaces. Canva Pro has an AI in it. So if you didn't know this as a congregation, it's a little bit of jumping through a few hoops, but you can get Canva for free. And you want to know why they're giving it to you for free? Because they're using you to develop the product. I think it's so hilarious when people come up and tell me, this company really cares about me. I'm like, you've apparently not worked for a corporate entity in a very long time. Here's your glass trophy for 25 years of service. By the way, you're fired. I'm like, no, they don't care about you. They're using you to develop their product. And I'm okay with that, right? I'm cool with that. But Canvas Pro has an AI in it that can help you punch out backgrounds. So you, like, say you have a photographer in your church and maybe they're not even that great, and I'm completely cool with that. I train the photographers. I run a free course like about once a year. I've shot professionally for a very long time. I do hot arts, a bunch of other stuff, what you do. But if you have somebody who feels they love arts and they want to take pictures, let them take pictures around your campus. Get them child certified, by the way, because they need to go in your children's department. Just a little FYI. Let them take pictures and then have them drop them to a Google Drive, and then you can go in, or one of your assistants can go in, grab some pictures, punch the background out of them with the auto removal, drop them into 1920-1080, and put a thing on it, and you just made a slide. Right? You grab the Instagram thing, drop it in, put it in the template, you just made social media. This is not a horrible thing, but here's the horrible part. Continually pray and look for someone who feels called to this, because you don't want to rob someone's ministry. And I believe that God is called. I know we talk about arts in the church, we think of like high church. I think we got to get that out of our head. Like, arts in the church is that God made us creative. He's the creator, so we can be creative. And I want to glorify Him with that. I want to glorify Him with the images and the graphics and the writing, So look for someone to do it. Some great tools for this, if you're looking for tools. Pulpit AI again. Zelly is a really good one for doing reels. If you're not in the Subsplash ecosystem, Pulpit AI is still available to you. It's not crazy expensive. It's like $40 a month or so. What it will do is you can feed your sermons into it. It downloads them. It kind of gets an idea through your sentence spacing and syncopation, and it pulls reels out for you. And it goes ahead and does the text and everything in there. You can do the karaoke with a little block behind it, and it runs it for you. That's a phenomenal tool, like if you want to run reels on social. It also gives you suggested social media statements. Again, I would kind of look through those and edit them. And the last thing I would say that it does, and this is all like for $40-something a month, the last thing it can do is summate your sermon and also write questions related to it. And I actually know guys, I have mixed emotions personally about this, but I know guys that basically just take those questions down, like they preach, eat lunch, grab those questions, edit them, and send them to their small groups. So it's clean enough, honestly. I'm not doing it, but it's clean enough that it's that close. So it's coming right out of what you just preached. Here's the risk. If you pumped your sermon through AI, you just fed AI to AI. So just be aware of that. I ain't hating on you, but you get the gist. Like, you're now feeding sausage in the sausage maker that just came out of the sausage maker. Sooner or later, the induction loop kicks over. But if it's inspired by the Holy Spirit and you feel called to it and you preach and teach it, it's going to help make reels. And you're like, well, what are reels for? Well, they pretty much take over social media. They get don't look like who you're not, right? That's a big piece of technology and presentation. Like, look who you are. So that's pretty much it for me, and I'm open to, I don't know how much time we have left, I'm open to questions. Anybody have any questions? Hey, I would hope somebody did.
I don't have a question on the statement.
Yeah.
When I first started the ministry, I was looked up to this one pastor that he preached for an hour and he just like held my attention. It's so much information. And I said, one day I want to be like him. And then later on in ministry, I found out that he had 10, 15 interns that did all his research for him. And illustrations, this is back before AI and all that stuff, And so when AI started having the ability to do all of that stuff, I realized that it was just a tool like using 10 interns. Same thing. I would test my intern, make sure they were giving me the right information. But it's not a bad tool if used in the right way. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. Use it in a way that's can be effective because I'm the one cleaning the bathrooms plus putting out message plus from the hospital.
Right.
So being able to use that technology for that, it's a good thing. And I've heard a lot of pastors that were just like, stay away from it, evil, but yet, like you said, we're using AI every day. So anyway, that's fun.
Yeah, I would say, again, with caution and conviction.
Yeah.
A big trigger for me personally, and you got to find your moment, your threshold, right? Is if it's a space of my heart that requires the Holy Spirit. So interaction with people, making craft and art. But again, if you have no one doing this and you really feel that you need to get a social media presence, then let it edit some cell phone pictures and let it run a little post that's based off your sermon. Like, I don't see any harm in that, as long as you keep praying and pursuing someone who you may be robbing someone of a space that they could find value in. So
remember Microsoft Word when it first came out, you were able to take the data off of a spreadsheet that you put addresses in a letter and hit mail merge, and it would merge these together. And then you add your image of your signature, and it looked like you signed a letter directly to that person with their data information on that letter. It's no different, really, to be able to use AI for that, again, but you got to realize where you're coming from.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't do mail merge, to be honest. So if that tells you anything, like I have a personal conviction space where it's like, if you get a text message from me and it sounds illiterate because I wrote it, like that's, it's poorly punctuated because I wrote it. Like there's a solid fingerprint on this thing, right, with all the smudges. But everybody's got to find, again, you got to find your convictional spaces in it, And I'm not sending 1,000 text messages either, I don't know. You get to a point where you just got to find, like, is this okay? And here's another big piece. You have to think, could I stand in front of this person and tell them I did this thing? Right. So that's the one thing that bothers me about my friend that's sending these like Chat GPT pre-programmed text message response to his congregation. Yeah. I was like, bro, what if they ask you, you don't remember which one it sent? Right? Oh, that really blessed my heart, and So I don't know. I think God has entrusted us with a high and holy calling. Like I said, I have a hard time calling it work. I took a pretty significant pay increase to do this, and I have a hard time calling it work because it's just not work. It doesn't feel like manual labor. Right? Yes, sir.
Let's go ask if you had any recommendation on how to prompt Gemini. So last week I was doing some research and I had to kind of learn, so I finally said, list the points of this research project and give you the links.
Yeah, so you can't talk to it nicely. I know that's not, that's what it kind of wants you to do, because it wants to learn speech modeling off of you. It's a computer, and the more you speak to it like a computer, the more it will respond to you the way you want. That's you driving. Case in point, if I was like, Genesis 3, I wouldn't do this by the way, but like say Genesis 3, comma, overall topics, comma, core principles, comma, scriptural references, comma, New American Standard 95, comma. So like I'm basically just giving it if scenarios in real basic computer programming. Like if you do smart home stuff, you're like maybe you do Alexa or Google Nest or it's Nest, right? Google's Nest, yeah. So you would basically tell it like if this box gets checked, check these boxes, or like automated forms. Like on your church, if you do planning center, there's automated forms. Like if they say this, then it does this. That's a if scenario. So think like if this, then that, right? So and that's a little bit not how we generally think, especially since you've spent a lot of your life learning how to write eloquently and learn Greek and Hebrew, right? Think more like translated King James, right? Where there's 25 or 30 commas in a sentence. I'm doing Sicily here, but you get the gist. Like, you want to say minimal stuff in commas, and you'll keep it in its house a little bit at that point. So, anybody else? Sir?
I've gotten this question a couple of times. It's not necessarily AI ministry, but one of your points clued me to think this way about a question I got. They probably got it from some sort of TikTok, some sort of reel somewhere along the lines. But I've got this question several times about Revelation 13, the image of the beast, and powers given to the beast, and it does these certain tasks, and they're linking that with AI technology. Any thoughts on
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so my mom, of all things, right? So I pray, this is so great. I pray, God is so good and so sovereign. I pray, Mom, God, I need an outside source. My mom calls, right? I got permission, right? I'm not trashing my mom. She's pretty low tech. I mean, like so low tech that she basically just has a computer with no protection on it until it gets so virally loaded, I go back and reformat it. So she has a hard drive. She does genealogy a lot, and so she has a hard drive. She plugs and unplugs so it doesn't get corrupted. It's so backwards. But I've just given up. I've just totally given up. So I love my mom, but it's too Sisyphean to be functional, you know. The boulder's on me more than it's off of me. So she calls and asks. We're talking about AI. She's like, she tells me this genealogy search and how great it was. I was like, Mom, can I ask a question? She's like, sure. So Mom, could you give me like your actual view of AI? She's like, I think this is a trap. I'm like, of course it's a trap. I mean, the bird seed's in the road and there's an amble over it. Like, it doesn't take a week. And so she's like, well, you know, you're going to pick on me for this. This is my mom. She's like, you're going to pick on me for this. And I kind of feel like it's the Tower of Babel. And I was like, cool. It hit heavy. Because, and you will be like God. Yeah. Right? Now, I'm not one of those end times fearful people. I have a Bible at my house. I collect antique Bibles. And I have a Bible at my house from an African-American woman in like 1931, 32. And you think about someone in 32, how much they've experienced. Multiple plagues, multiple wars, all this stuff. Everything in her Bible is the world's going to end tomorrow. All her notes is doomsday, and it's all going to end tomorrow, and here we are, and it is not ended tomorrow. Right? So I don't want to be that person. Like, to be fair, if you didn't know, Hobby Lobby doesn't have barcodes because they believe that was going to be the mark of the beast, and now they just can't go back on their convictions. I don't know if we're past barcodes and we're into QR codes, and every one of us are using those things, right? They're just data mappers. And now we have NFC tags. So you have your key to your hotel room that doesn't even open an actual lock anymore. But, I mean, there's much to be said without being a doomsdayer. That are we transhumanism? Moral humanism, Gene Roddenberry, Star Trek, The Next Generation, right? The ultimate example of transhumanism and moral humanism, where they believe that they will evolve beyond their sin. They'll become so smart and so technologically advanced that they would sin no more. They would be a balanced and civil utopian society. I think that is absurd because, I don't know if you know this, but Alfred Nobel made something called tinitro-toluene. We know it as TNT or dynamite. And towards the end of his life, he felt so convicted for its uses that he started the Nobel Peace Prize. Because once you let that out of the box, Pandora, you can't put it back, right? I don't know if you would agree with me, but I would say that every time we discover something, we just find a new way to do the same sin. As Solomon would say, there's no new thing under the sun. So, you know, I think there's something to be said. I don't know if it's the mark of the beast, but it's definitely, like, we have to be very cautious.
Just because they're linking it because of the buy-sell trade.
Yeah.
They're looking at Bitcoin. They're looking at things like that. Well, they're saying, hey, maybe there's some connection.
It's hard to argue because technically, okay, let's go back to did I lose my 20? All right, let's go back to this. There's no gold standard anymore, right? So what is this thing really? The money. It's paper. We believe it's a value because we believe it's a value. And so, how many of you, like Scrooge McDuck, swim through your savings account? You ever dove into your 401k? Right? No. And so, is it that far off? Like, our internet goes down at our church campus, and we can't barely do anything. I think it's still down right now, right? Apparently, we can though, because we can still handwrite notes, and you know. So, yes, sir.
You mentioned Logos, which I use regularly. Pulpit AI, which I haven't, but you said there was another one.
This is really bad. They're really bad. They're in development right now. It's called Christian AI. You don't want to look it up, trust me. But it is developed completely inside of Logos. Is worked harder than anyone else to keep this thing contained, but not in a box. If that makes any sense. I would say if you think of AI, think of like parenting a little bit, which I'm not a parent, but think of parenting a little bit. They have made sure that it doesn't see what it shouldn't see, but is aware that it exists.
I love it searches through all the books that I purchased on there. It's just, and I'm able to cite them. I mean, it's just
right.
Really good.
Oh, it's so great. And the thing that, if you're wondering what the difference between it and an actual search engine is, a search engine is searching specific words or just a couple of terms. So these things have learned speech and language modeling at such a level that can kind of somewhat, they don't learn, by the way, and they don't actually understand. But it can simulate a concept that knows what the sentence structure is. Like it gets the concept. So when you say, hypothetically, something about the Reformation, maybe you have Metaxas as Martin Luther, right? Which is, I got to meet him at the Hope Women's Conference, by the way, and he's like, I love your books. And he's like, oh, thank you. It's like, all of them? I was like, no, I don't like VeggieTales. True statement. So, but if you have Metaxas on there and it's like you're talking about Reformation, it would maybe it would know some of that sentence structure that would fit your query really well. So, yes, sir.
What about AI apologetics? Like we've had that one lady come on who goes, what's the best religion in the world, blah, blah, blah. How to counteract that in one sense? Because so many young people, even who are going to be looking at that, go, well, she said, well, she's not even real, but whatever.
Right. So you're talking deep fake stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. So, because I haven't seen that specific one, but we're not going to be able to individually defend against deep fake. Like, we're going to end up inevitably needing some political movements that make it illegal because we're not able to identify them and they're getting too good. There will start being, there are already deepfake monitors, so there are already programs that can run on them and they're looking for all this stuff. Here's the funny thing, they're looking for our imperfections. So it becomes like freeform jazz, right? Or like the difference between I collect vinyls, so when the gritty vinyls, that really just has a little bit of hiss into it and all that. It's got the nice needle hit and all that. It's looking for that serendipity to the grit, to know, the little ticks, the small body language, but we don't pick up on it unless we know the person. So the funny thing is we're using AI to fight AI, but we're just using, actually to be fair, users are fighting users with AI.